On the morning of the 26th of August 1346, the English army under Edward III faced 8,000 French knights at Crecy. It must have been a horrible sight to see them line up for battle behind their infantry. Slowly the mass of iron and muscles began to move. There was no need to hurry, as their prey had no chance to escape. The 2,500 English knights had dismounted their horses and took a defensive position. If they would break, they would be slaughtered by the French behemoth. Only a few hundred meters separated the English infantry from the French knights. Suddenly, they began to gallop. The earth was shaking under their hoofs. Before we start the video, I want to ask you for your support. If you want to help me, please like and share this video. It helps me a lot. Thank you. The situation did not look good for Edward's men at Crecy. The knight had dominated the European battlefield since the Battle of Hastings in 1066. The days of large infantry armies were over. From that moment on, it was upon the medieval nobility to fight. And at Crecy, Edward was faced by the men who were deemed to be the best knights of Europe. Knights were expensive, but thanks to its fertile grounds, France was able to field the largest number of knights on the European continent. The French knights knew this, and therefore they were looking for a fast victory, especially since their enemy was forced to dismount. I mean, you cannot really take a defensive position on a horse. Therefore, many French knights were seeking for a place in the first row of the attack, because here they hoped that they could at least gain some glory. Well, let's say that they were wrong. The English king had a joker: peasants. The Battle of Crecy began with a firefight between the English longbow archers and the French crossbowmen. Here, the longbowmen ended up victorious. Thanks to the enemy's higher rate of fire, the French crossbowmen were forced to flee, and at the same time the French knights began to storm on the enemy. Their advance was slowed down by the fleeing crossbowmen. But this was not all. Next, they were met by a storm of arrows. 8,000 English longbowmen opened fire on the advancing French knights. Their effective fire disrupted their attack. Many of the horses were killed by the incoming arrows, and the knights were thrown to the ground. While some were able to get back on their feet, many were trampled to death or suffocated in the mud. The survivors were met by the English men-at-arms, who engaged them in brutal hand-to-hand combat. They were pulled from their horses and finished on the ground. After the first attack had ended in a disaster, the French knights decided to launch another one. To understand this, you have to understand the medieval world. The world of the knights was dominated by chivalry. For example, it was seen as honorless to use tactics like ambushes. The knight should always seek for the open fight with the enemy. In the best case, their enemies were other knights. In these fights, the knights were able to show their skills, and they could also win fame and reputation. So now imagine that you were a knight and you had just lost against English men-at-arms and their peasant bowmen. Retreating was not really an option, so you had to try it again and again and again, and this is what they did. Every time it just got worse. The ground was covered by the bodies of dead horses and dead knights, and the French were not able to gain any momentum on the battlefield. Also, the English men-at-arms stood their ground and defeated wave after wave of French enemies. Interestingly, they were also the ones who paid the price for the victory. While hundreds of English knights were killed, the longbowmen suffered nearly no casualties. I mean, just imagine, English aristocrats were giving their lives to protect English peasants. At the end of the day, the English army was victorious. The French knights had suffered catastrophic losses and were forced to retreat. Up to 1,542 French knights were killed in the battle. Under them was also King Johann of Bohemia, Lord of Luxembourg, who had formed an alliance with the French king. So why do I tell you all of this? Well, Crecy was decisive, but it did not end the war. As you know, the 100 Years' War continued another 100 years. However, it did saw an important revolution on the medieval battlefield. Infantry defeated cavalry. For a long time, infantry had played a passive role on the medieval battlefield. Usually, they had protected the knights till they rushed into battle. At Crecy, dismounted knights defended the peasant infantry. Here, the dominance of the cavalry ended. Infantry was back. Also, it were peasants that decided the outcome of the battle. Without the English longbowmen, the knights would have been defeated by the French cavalry, and without the English knights, the longbowmen would have been cut down by the French knights. Nobles and peasants fighting side by side, both being dependent on the other. At Crecy, they were equal. I think that battles like the one of Crecy gave the common people new self-esteem. They began to demand more rights, resulting in the steady decline of serfdom in England. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to see one of my last ones, just click on the right. As always, stay healthy, see you next time, and bye.